Hey class, what's going on today? Hi Minerva, you want to join class? Hello. What's up, Nakara? What's up, Lena? Let me download this one. I think that I'm just downloading some stuff. Today we're going to go over the questions, your participation questions, and then I am going to review a few other of the Monarch Butterfly projects. And then finally, we are going to introduce our new project. And, oh, okay, this is... Let me do something real quick. Let me see. I know there was someone else who had one, two. Okay, this one. I'll still download this one. But yeah, so this next project that we're going to be working on is going to be similar to the Monarch Butterfly project, except it's going to be of your own volition. So I'm going to give you guys guidelines to what I'm looking for when it comes to your 3 scene animation that you guys are going to have customized, that you're going to like custom do. It's essentially an infographic. We'll obviously talk about it more. But there will be guidelines to it, and we'll go over that project tonight. But let's kind of get started with the questions section. How are you guys doing today? All right. I'm going to start with this one here, which I think is Nakara. What's
Hello,
up?
so my question of the week is after we're done with this class, what is the best option to move forward after this class? Like, I know some classes are hard to get into more than others, so which one should I already be looking out for? Thank you.
Well, it kind of depends on are you going to continue, Nakara? Are you going to continue staying along like the path of animation? By the way, the Lena asked if the revision 1 round has a due date range like the other projects. Yes, it does. I wanted to give everything's going to have a ranged date here, so like as long as you get it in within that range, you'll be okay. And then Nakara said he's doing okay, plan a lot of do a lot of homework, and I am doing well as well. I'm doing good. I took a long hike today, and I'm tired only because of the hike, but it was kind of warmer out than I was expecting. It was like 90 degrees and dusty, so if I'm coughing or a little bit hoarse, I apologize. But if you're staying in the program, back to your question, Nakara, I would start looking at Casey Farina's classes that he offers as far as like 3D animation goes. And then he also has like video effects class that he teaches as well. But I would kind of start to look into getting into those classes. I'm not sure if there is or how long a wait list is to get into those. I know he works with a couple different programs too. Like he does a lot of stuff in Cinema 4D. He also does a lot of things in Substance Painter, which is like texturing your objects, your 3D objects. Also does things inside of Unity, I believe. So like gaming kind of stuff. So I would definitely check out some of his classes. And after this class, I mean, just continuing along the path, getting that associate's degree. And when you're ready to start looking into a four-year college, I would start to do that. There's more schools that are starting to offer four-year degrees for animation. I mean, it used to be only a select handful of schools would teach it, but now a majority of four-year universities do have some sort of program that entails that. I think that um, NAU might have one. Obviously, like Cal Arts and stuff like that, but those are, I mean, those are very hard classes, or that's a very hard school to get into. Um, Let me think of some other places. There's like Huntington College. So there's several other universities you could look at. I always suggest looking at more than one option and like looking over their financial plans for that stuff before you sign the dotted line and say I'm going to this route, you know. But yeah, I would just say continue like going into the classes that Casey offers. I know there's a couple other schools within the Maricopa Community College District that also offer some like additional animation courses. PVCC is one of them. So, and I believe they're online. So you might want to check into that too, because usually if it's within the Maricopa Community College umbrella, you can transfer credits and whatnot. That would be something though I would say definitely talk to an advisor about that kind of stuff. Because I'm not all privy to all the like details of doing something, like all of that kind of back end work and with the administrative side of it. So you know, that's why I say talk to your advisor with that because they'll have more information on it. But I believe those credits do transfer or they like count. So good question. Jasmine.
Hello, I have a question in Cinema 4D.
Yeah, okay.
When I select the basketball here, and I just want to grab the basketball frames, but whenever I click this one to drag, if I click, everything gets selected on this line, and I don't want that. I just want to select the ones that are from the basketball. So how can I move just the basketball frame? Because if I grab this one, everything moves along with it.
Yeah, I know. It's such a
Yeah,
pain.
that's my question.
Here, let me go
For
ahead and
this week.
open a Cinema 4D
All right,
project
thank you.
to look at. Close this out of the way. Let's see, what was that one? The Real and Surreal project? Let's open that up. Did I do anything in this one? Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, not a problem, Nakara. What do you seem to be more interested in? Are you more interested in 2D animation or 3D animation? That's another thing too. This is the wrong file. Why did I open it twice? Let me do this one then. If you're interested, here, let me say this. If you art classes are always beneficial in our field. Same with like graphic design classes, right? So if you are wanting to go more into 2D, you'd say 2D because I've never, ever since elementary, I've done 2D animation on my own. I have a couple of projects maybe I can show. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, dude. You should always post that kind of stuff in Slack, having other people look at your work and being like comfortable showing your work is something that it takes time building. And so, definitely if you guys have personal projects, always post them in the Slack and be like, "Hey, I've got this personal project. Does anyone have any suggestions or let me know what you think about it?" And I've had students do that in the past. It's a great way of, showing your work, connecting with other students. I love that you say you can show. I would love to see those kind of things. And if you're interested in the 2D work, I really think that any kind of drawing classes or graphic design classes would be very beneficial. Graphic design, because you learn about placement and um, kind of how to draw the viewer's eyes across the screen in a certain way. And obviously, you learn more about like Photoshop and Illustrator and things like that. So if you need more work in those things, I would suggest, taking maybe a graphic design class. Also, as far as art classes go, traditional art really transfers over in a lot of ways to also doing digital artwork. I'm not saying they're one and the same, or that if you're great at traditional artwork that you're going to be great at digital artwork. They are two different mediums. I am much better at drawing traditionally, paper, pencil, painting, watercolor, those kind of things. I'm way more comfortable with actually than digital, and it's just because I grew up doing that. But learning how to properly draw. When I was in school, I took a figure drawing class, and that really helped me learn proportion really well. And being able to look at something and draw it visually, and that's a benefit of those kind of classes, is just learning forms, learning different techniques and stuff like that. And then you get those ideas that you can bring into animation. So, if you want to take some other classes that might not be on the track of, you still have to pay for those classes, right? But maybe they will be on the track. Maybe they can be substituted or used for certain classes. That's something like, again, talk to your advisor about regarding that. But I really think that any kind of like artistic class is going to be very beneficial. Even if you are into architectural drawings or modeling, like architectural stuff also is still very artistic. It's just very technical. That's a really good thing to look into, or like, practice on. Depends on where you feel your strengths are and where you kind of want to focus and hone your skills into. But yeah, I definitely think that based on kind of where you're feeling things out, I think you should still take the 3D classes, because learning animation and any of the other animated animation classes or video effects and stuff like that are going to be beneficial to this. For unfortunately, right now we don't have any hand drawn animating classes here at GCC. I don't know though about at any of the other schools within the district, so that you might want to look into, because there might be. I know there's like a comic drawing class, but it's not animation. But yeah. Um, and then back to your question, Jasmine, about selecting let's see here. Let's see if we can recreate this. Okay, so I've got this ball and I don't want to select all of these, right? I just want like the positions right here, right? So I would select specifically if you want to see which keyframe it is, you're going to have to drop down these little folders, right? If I just want to grab the rotation of the ball, I would grab that. So these little drop down folders are really important when it comes to your objects inside of your summary panel on your dope sheet. And it's always going to have 3 different keyframes, because you were working in 3 different dimensions. So that's why it looks really congested, right? Because there's 3 different ways that these objects can be manipulated, or 3 different, how do I say it? Like directional ways, that coordinates that it can take. So that's why, like, obviously if I'm going to grab the hammer, it looks kind of crazy. I'm like, oh, maybe I just want to grab, if you have position, rotation, if you have a bunch of different ones, it's going to look like there's a lot, or like they're stacked on top of each other, because some of them might be lined up with each other. And so at that case, whenever you're looking to specifically, like, obviously I've got the ball here. And so if I grab this and move this anywhere in my timeline, it's going to move both my position and my rotation parameters are going to move along with that, because I have them both selected. So that's like, if you want the entire object moved around, do that. Now, if you want to grab specific parameters, like I only want to grab the rotation, then you want to drop this menu down and go and grab the rotation there. And then if you drop it down even further, it will show you which ones have a rotation change on it. So then as far as position, like if I drop this one down, it's like, oh, your Z position is the only one that seems to have any kind of movement on it. But, if there were different directions, like if it moved Z and X, it would show this here. And then the colors would coordinate to whichever coordinate you're on. The colors would relate to whichever coordinate you're looking at. So because I have this ball animated on the Z plane, it's blue, right? And then if I have like my rotation right here is obviously on the X axis, so it's red. And then if it were anywhere it had to do with the Y, it would be green. But that's kind of the way that you can look down here and get a grasp on which ones you're grabbing at. But if you grab the main object in your hierarchy here, right? Like if I grab the ball, it's going to grab all of the keyframes related to that ball and not just specific ones. So that's something to know. I don't think that you can turn off, I'm not sure. I think this turns the animation off. Like if I go here, yes. See, because now all of a sudden the ball here wasn't moving, right? Because so hitting these little eyes next to this isn't gonna hide or reveal your keyframes. What it's doing is it's hiding the animation, right? But as soon as I click that on, it's going to reveal it. Let me turn those all on. And so yeah, there's really no easier way to get behind that. I don't know if you can let me see. Add property tracks. I don't think there's a way to like filter out and only have the keyframes on there that are related, because whenever you keyframe something, it's going to add all the rest of them into it, even though that's the only one you changed. Let me see here. Let me look online and see if there's a different way. Sorry, guys. Hold on, I'm just reading something. I'll see if there's any other, maybe Belle might know. a shortcut that can hide those. Let me undock. Let me see here. Tabs. No. I'll look into this a little further and see if there's a way that we can do that. But for right now, this is just all I know is to kind of drop these down and just understanding which ones you're selecting by selecting the specific properties. Um, but I'll still see if I can find a different way or if there's something else that can help us figure that out. If there is a way to just kind of simplify the timeline. Let's go Giselle.
Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be talking about the Eve project that we had. Um, so I really enjoyed creating Eve. It was very interesting. It was very new to me as well. I really enjoyed the process and I really enjoyed how she came out. But as you can see, this is the remaster, so I went in and edited how she flew in, where she was kind of centered more into view.
That looks good.
But
Nice.
I really enjoyed this project. It was really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. I mean, obviously, let me know if you have any questions, but I'm happy to hear that you enjoyed the project. It looks like the changes that you've made on the Eve animation though, they look good. I see her head doesn't like intersect with her body, which is nice. And that you implemented all the changes that I requested, so it looks really nice. Good job on that. Audrey.
Hello.
What's up,
For this
Audrey?
week's question, I only have like really one question. Um, for late assignments, do we just turn them in to you through Canvas if the assignment is blocked?
Yeah.
Do we
So
like just send them through Canvas, either through email and Canvas or Slack?
yeah.
I was just wondering with that.
Yeah, you can do either Canvas or Slack. Nakar sometimes sends them to my email. I will see them either way. Usually I check all three. Um if not every day, every other day. So usually I will be on top of that. Sometimes on the weekends, obviously it's slower. I'm not seeing them right away. But yeah, send them to me in Canvas. I'm would prefer that because I can download it right away and then just start looking at it. Uh Slack is just fine too. The problem with Slack is that there's a limited amount of data that you can upload. And so, depending on your file size, it might give you issues. And if that's the case, I don't want you rendering it at a smaller file size in order to send it to me in Slack. Just send it to me in Canvas or in email at that point. But good question. Lena.
Hi. So when I was working on the butterfly project, I want to explain one problem I had, and I have four questions.
Yeah, perfect.
So the problem I was talking about when I was watching your video for the third scene, I think I misunderstood that you said you wanted to ease the path animation when the butterflies fly across the screen. But now I just understand that you wanted just the butterfly flapping to be eased. But because I thought the path animation was supposed to be eased like this, I easy eased all of them, and when I played it, it looked super jerky, like so. So what I did was I took all of them and changed them to linear keyframes. Keyframe. So I changed it to linear,
And
and
it
now when
smoothed
I
it
play
out.
it,
Yeah.
it's so much smoother.
Yeah.
So that's what I did to
Yeah, and
solve that one.
that's what I was talking about when you have and I know we talked about this Lena last class too about like the instance of a car driving, like you have your screen here and you have a car and like here's, well, I don't know. That's obviously not a car. Let me back up here. You have your car and it needs to drive this way. and it's off screen. And as it drives on screen, you want this keyframe right here, this first one, you want it to be linear because the speed is at the set speed. You want that at peak speed, right? Because he's going to be, maybe he's going to stop here. And then this is where you're going to want the ease keyframe because you're going to want the car to ease into the stop right here. And then he's going to stop here. Car is now in this area, right? He stopped. And then gets the green light. It needs to go move forward off screen, right? And so again, this keyframe is going to be eased. And then this keyframe will be linear. And because you want to be hitting peak speed off screen. And so when you're easing all of the keyframes, let me clear all this out. When you're easing all of your keyframes at once, like let's say you have a keyframe here and a keyframe here, and your timing's kind of cramped up, right? The timing is tight in between those areas, especially when you do along a path like this. You can't really control where these are right away. It automates that for you when you orient or when you copy the path to the position. And so really what you can do at that point is move these over or smooth them out. And so when you have like kind of a tight grouping like that and you ease all of your keyframes, your graph starts to look like this, right? It starts to look kind of crazy. And it's like there's too much, there's not enough time for there to really be smooth. You can go through and try and smooth it out, right? So you get these nice smooth swoops at the bottom and at the top, but it still might look like it's jerking a little bit. And so the solution to that was to make all of them linear, right? Because the butterfly's at peak speed all the way across the screen. It's not like the butterfly is landing, right? Unlike your first butterfly that you had, which was already here, and then you had animated him off, which at that point, this keyframe would be eased and this last keyframe would be linear. But, you know, you're moving across the screen at the same speed because there's not landing. He's already flying. And so that's why it's best to keep all of these keyframes just linear. So there's certain times I think I'm going to rephrase how I say that stuff in the beginning of the class. You know, like I'm like, no linear keyframes, but it's wrong, right? I was wrong. And I'll admit that I was wrong because linear keyframes are good in certain circumstances. You just have to start thinking of what is the motion that I want to have here? Is it already on screen and then moving, or is it off screen and coming onto screen, or off screen and moving off screen, right? So you have to just kind of pre-plan a little bit how that motion's going to look. That doesn't mean that you can't ease the motion in between or do things in between to have it look, but it's going to change the look of the animation, obviously. Also, Lena mentioned in the chat that Canvas also has a file size limit. So if you guys are having that issues, I don't think you're going to be rendering anything out that's going to have a file size issue within Canvas. But if you are, just zip the file. Ooh, I apologize. Zip the file and then send that to me. Because it'll be compressed at that point. And then if you're still having issues, definitely shoot me a message in Slack and we can figure that out.
The first question I had was, when I imported all my background layers in, they became, like when I imported the Illustrator background layers in, it suddenly became scattered. Like everything is not in its place and I had to rearrange everything back together. But I don't think that happened. That didn't happen when I imported the layers from the assembly line project because everything just came as it was.
Question, Lena, did you import it as a composition retain layer sizes, or did you just import it as a composition? Let me know.
And I didn't have to do any rearranging. Is there a reason for that?
That might be the reason. The other thing is sometimes um I will bring an illustration into After Effects and it will be off for some reason, and I'll try importing it again and I'll have like this hiccup where it does kind of do that, like it's off screen. Like I'll import it and then I'm like, where is it? And I think it has to do with maybe the Illustrator file and where in space the illustration was created on the Illustrator file. Yeah, because the retained layer sizes should have automatically brought them in the same spot, and it might have just messed with the order of the layers. Was that the problem, the order of the layers, or was it like were they off screen and like weirdly scattered? I know you said they were scattered about. Were they off screen and kind of like in odd places?
Or was it something I could do to prevent that from happening? My second question.
You can throw the computer out the window. I'm just kidding. No, just the placement of the layers. Um, yeah, so weird. I don't know why it does that. And I'm assuming, knowing you, you probably troubleshooted and tried to do it a couple times. Hmm. Let me look it up. I'm just looking, see if there's something in a forum. Did you, when you brought the Illustrator file in, Lena, did you work in, like, did you open up the composition that it made when it imported? Or did you delete that and then kind of make your own composition and try and drag them in that way? You think you just kept the composition? Okay, yeah. So odd. I'm curious if it has to do with the anchor point on the objects as well. I can always show my process in the next OBS. I know what's happening. Um, but I'm just curious on like where the issue is lying. So I'll look that up. That's okay. I'm gonna play your other question though. Let's go here. I'm reading in some of these forums right now and seeing if I can find it, but
Is about the grass animation. So I followed the tutorial for the grass, and when I used the bend it effect, every time I decided to move this blade of grass somewhere else, I had to take this white circle and put it back to where it was supposed to be at the top, and I had to do that every time I wanted to move the grass. Is there a more efficient way to do?
Yeah, that's the pain. I think that's the Achilles heel of that bended effect. And so what I like to do at that point is I take that grass and I pre-compose it, even though it's a singular layer and it's not like I have anything else. I pre-compose that layer. And so that way, when I go to duplicate it um inside of my like composition, the main composition that I'm currently working in, that it will move that effect with it. Like it's all locked into place. And so it's not like you're moving anything within that pre-comp, you're just moving that pre-comp around. And so that's kind of the way to get around that issue, which is kind of dumb. Like you would think there'd be like some way to lock it in place with the object that it's on, but it unfortunately doesn't do that. The same thing happens for a lot of effects. So similar to the gradient's going to do that as well. So if you have a gradient on an object and you go to move that object, the gradient will change usually. If it's an effect that you added on. So if you add the gradient effect specifically and not just putting the gradient on the object directly, it's kind of like, the workarounds that we have to do in order to figure out those problems or mitigate those issues. I'm going to open up After Effects so I can show you. Good questions though, Lena. Here. Okay. Unfortunately, I did the complete opposite. I made a pre-comp with all the grass blades, duplicated the grass within that pre-comp. Yeah. I've done those things before, when you're first working and you're like, "Oh my gosh," and you don't know any other workaround with it and you just keep trucking. You're like, "I guess this is how it goes." And then you're like, "I wish this isn't what the answer was, but it is." Then you're like, gosh dang. Let me go ahead and create a new composition here and I will show you how to do this. New comp 1920 1080. All right. Switch to stroke. Green for grass. Okay. So I've got my blade of grass here. And in fact, let me do it straight up and down so I can bend it based on the bended effect. Redo this. All right. And I'm going to go to my effects and presets and type in bend it. Drop it onto this layer and change the layer color so we can see here, let me turn off the transparency there. Go. All right, here is the CC Bend It. And this one looks like this one's the end. I think it should be at the bottom. The start should be somewhere up here. And then, will this bend right? Wrong. Opposite. Switcheroo. There we go. All right, now the bend here. Now, what Lena was experiencing, right? So I've got the bend happening on my grass layer. Let's say duplicate this grass layer. I grab it and then I'm like, I want to move it. Well, all of a sudden, you notice it's like disappearing because this bended effect has like its own little bounding box. And so then what Lena was having to do is select that and then take these little individual like anchor points that the effect uses and moving them back to the thing, which is very tedious if you're creating a comp with a ton of grass in it. And so what you should do is you just take this and you shift Control C and you pre-compose it. So grass blade pre-comp here. And now when what you can do at this point is you can take this, if you click this little box right here, we can change the size of the pre-comp because right now it's 1920 by 1080, which it defaults to your composition size, but I don't necessarily need it that big. I just kind of want it big enough to see the grass. So I'm just going to maybe make it about that big. And then what you do is you come up to layer, or I'm sorry, to composition, and you go to crop comp to region of interest because I'm changing the region of interest, right? In fact, I did it in the wrong one. I would have to go into the pre-comp itself and do it. So go into the pre-comp, select the region of interest tool, then go in here, and I would probably bring that up a little bit. And now composition, crop it to the region of interest there. Let's grab this because this needs to move down, which also means these need to move. All right, let's say that grass was animating, this was moving back and forth, but now I can take this pre-comp, which has a smaller little bounding box, and I can duplicate this and move this anywhere, and that's going to move along with it. And so I would just be duplicating the pre-comp over and over and over again. Now, the thing is if you want variation on that grass, right? Because right now, if these were animated, the animation would all be going the same way. You could either take these pre-compositions and you could sequence them like this, or what you could do is you could create an alternate one, right? So you'll go up here to your grass blade pre-comp and I'll right click and I want to duplicate it, or I'll just hit Control D to duplicate, and I'll rename this grass blade variation 2 pre-comp, move that there. And so bring this one into here, go inside of here, and then change this one. So let's say that this one, I want the animation to happen the opposite way. Maybe not so much. Maybe even my line is thicker, right? So it's a thicker blade of grass. And so now when I go into my main grass comp, I have this other one that's a second variation of that. So then I can go here and I can duplicate these ones and move these around. And I really suggest doing this to give things a lot of variation. And then still on top of that, going through and sequencing your layers inside of here, right? So if these were the second variation ones, maybe I'd want to change my layer color so that I could, tell which one was which, as far as just looking at my timeline and seeing which ones are where they are. And then I would still sequence these to still offset the animation timing. But other than that, that's kind of how you create the variation in the grass. What Lena did takes a lot of work, so I'm curious to see how much it ended up being, but good job and good question. Next question.
Do that. My third question is, in one of the tutorials, you said to vectorize the butterfly icon before you zoomed in by clicking this vector layer button. And I was wondering, did you do that because it wouldn't get blurry when you scaled it up?
Yes, correct.
Or is there another reason why you...
it's a continually rasterized button. So if you bring in an Illustrator document file and you go into, you have it pre-composed and it's not on, like sometimes they're automatically on like this one for me, but sometimes it's not on. You want to turn that on and it'll keep it from getting blurry, because sometimes what it's doing is when you nest that Illustrator file into a pre-comp, it's it's continually staying sharp inside of that pre-comp, but that pre-comp also needs to be turned on to, hey, make sure the pre-comp stays sharp so that it stays sharp within the main composition that it's in. Or else what will happen is it's like it's still being really sharp inside of that pre-comp, but then that pre-comp inside the main comp, it's like, I don't know what to do with it. Whatever, it looks fine, right? And that will happen if you're like, why is it still blurry? Even though you're like, in my pre-comp, it looks sharp, but then when I go into my main composition, it's looking blurry. I don't understand why. It's a vector. It should be working. You want to tap this continuously transform button here and I'm sorry, continuously rasterize the layer, and it will keep that sharp throughout your animation. It's something that is easy to kind of miss, and sometimes you'll catch it when you're rewatching your video over and you're like, why is that blurry? It shouldn't be blurry. It's a vector. That's the reason why. I did the post revised version in Slack if you wanted to see my grass results. Sweet. I actually downloaded it so that because you resubmitted it, I was going to look over it in class today. So that's awesome. Thanks for letting me know. And let's get to your last question.
This vector icon. Finally, my fourth question is, I noticed there's all these boxes out here when I zoom out. Is there a reason for that?
So those are your layer bounding. Those are your layers.
I couldn't find, in the old videos, I couldn't find the tutorial on how to animate the text like it showed on the example. And that's all my questions. Thank you.
Good questions, Lena. Killer job at asking these and catching like a bunch of detailed stuff. The one was just an effect for the text. It was the animate on by character. And then you can adjust it. It was just a character preset, animation preset here for text before, but you can always use the you can animate the text on any way you feel like at the end. I'm not necessarily focused on the animation of the text in this video. It's more about like showing information with illustrations. Now, as far as your other question goes with what was the other one? Before it had to do with the text. Let me see here.
And I was wondering...
The boxes. The boxes are just like your bounding boxes for each layer. Because the layer, when you bring that into After Effects from Illustrator, the layer isn't going to be as big as your entire composition, especially if you select to retain the layer size. And so this is just kind of the bounding boxes for it. And it looks really messy, but it's the way that you can kind of select your layers. Do you want them to, go away? Sometimes, yeah. There's a way to hide them, but it's easier to look and be able to see your bounding boxes there. It just makes it, you can just click this if you don't want to see them. This one right here, and that will shut them off. But you'll want to make sure that you turn that on in other situations. When images get very complex like this, it might be easier to do that. And then at that point, selecting things within within the scene and your stage isn't the best option. The best option to select a layer is to go down into your timeline and select a layer that way. But very good questions. Jesus.
Hello. Something that just confused me last night. I think I'm just reading too much into this, but when I was looking at the revisions 1, I saw the 1 feedback. I'm not too sure if this 1 dot means like just a listing.
Yeah, it's just a listing. Don't worry, it confused me too. And I don't know why Canvas does this, because in most applications like Word document or I don't know, Google Docs, when you have something numerically ordered, it's one, and then when you enter, it's usually like A when you go down and drop it down. And for some reason it doesn't do that within Canvas when I want to numerically order something. And so this is just listing it, and the ones really here should just be ignored. It's just, hey, look at the feedback and comments on either your live stream or in Canvas, right?
They do one feedback or something like that. I'm not too sure, but um, in my revisions, I did like a bunch of the feedbacks, like all the feedbacks. I wasn't sure if I was only supposed to do like one feedback.
No, I'm sorry.
And
I'll just change those to
also,
bullet
if
for next
there is
semester.
a revisions 2, when will it be?
Probably the second
Just so we
revision
can prepare ourselves.
will be right around Thanksgiving time, so in a couple weeks, because we're going to do this project, and then I'm going to have you do revision rounds on the other things, because Thanksgiving week is busy for everyone, and so I want that week to be a little bit slower for you guys as far as like project wise goes. So you're going to be doing the revisions to the rest of your project. So you've got the hierarchies for this one. Then the next one's going to be, there will be the Eve project. And this one with the monarch butterfly, and then today's project. So you just won't have as much feedback or as many projects to do in your second revision. Unless I say, hey, revise something else still on this one, like I want you to change some more stuff in any of these old projects, then you'll add that onto revision 2 as well. But that's not coming for a couple weeks. And yeah, that'll be there to be during the slow. I try and keep those during weeks when I give you guys time off, like Halloween and Thanksgiving, around those 2 days. Melissa.
Hello, my question is in Cinema 4D with weight. I am not really sure how to make this ping pong seem more weightless. Um, I tried to shorten these, but it doesn't really make it go down very quickly and then go back up very quickly. I was wondering if there was a way or a better way to do it. Thank you.
So to make them seem more weightless, you're going to have like a lighter ball, right? Is that you're going to have an initial really high bounce, and then the subsequent bounces are going to be very close to what it was before. And so you're going to have a lot of bounces happening, and they're going to be very close to each other in height as it goes down, right? So you're going to think of like a graded ramp. And if you were to draw the bounces within that graded ramp, like if I did this here, so you have well, let's do it the opposite way, right? A grade of a ramp that goes down. It's going to be a smooth transition for your bounces. Obviously, wait, let me do this. Let me make the curve look like a bounce. Right there. There. Versus a heavy bounce there. And the other thing with the light bounce, right, is they're going to be about the same distance apart here for a while. Like as we keep going lower, right, this distance will get shorter and shorter, but it's also a gradual change. So if you like to think of this kind of like if you were to draw it in like a graph form like this, right, you have the height of the bounces and the distance of each bounce decreasing very gradually in time until it gets down to here where it's going to stop, versus the ramp of like a really heavy ball, which would be almost like this, right? And then we draw the end here, and then we draw the bounces in it. You got this first bounce, and then you got the second bounce, and there's like a massive decrease in size and then timing. Like the distance, it becomes shorter and shorter. So the curves on your heavy ball are going to be short and tight, and they're going to be a dramatic angle like this. Actually, I don't know why I didn't think of drawing it like this in the first place for you guys, but I feel like this is a great visual representation of how your curve should look for bounces. So this would be the heavy. I don't know. I'm trying to. This would be heavy, right? And then the light would be like this, like a very gradual. Light bounce. So when you're looking at your graphs, right? So the heavy one, obviously, like I said, should be a nice steep slope, a very dramatic incline or decline to where there's a lot of space dropping between the peak here and the peak here, right? And then so on and so forth as it goes down. And then the space in between these is decreasing a lot quicker versus having a light ball where your peaks are going to be much closer together, right? And they're going to be about the same distance. I mean, they're going to slowly and gradually change in spacing, but very, very subtly, versus here's obviously more of a dramatic change to how the ball bounces. So I hope that helps you do that. So don't look at it. I think the biggest issue here, Melissa, is that you're looking at it.
My question. I tried.
You're looking at your curve maybe here more and less here more. I don't know. Let me
to
see.
shorten
No,
this,
you're
but
doing
it
here.
doesn't really make it go down very quickly and then go back up very quickly. I was wondering if there was a way or a better way to do it.
So you want to make it happen faster. You're going to change the shape of those curves so they're less broad and more sharp, right? So that's going to help with the speed. That's going to accelerate and decelerate a lot faster the sharper that curve is. So these right here are nice and smooth and wide, which actually is how it should move, right? This one too, nice and smooth and wide. But if you wanted to speed it up, this one looks like it should be. This should be here. It should come here. This one should be here, and then it would come here, and then so on and so forth. So you tighten maybe the distance here, and then also the shape of these curves here as well. So they would be sharper and less right, because right now they're really nice and broad. So it's going to be a very smooth bounce to it and a little bit slower. So you could speed them up that way. You can also grab all of your keyframes for this entire layer and just tighten them up a bit, like shorten the distance between everything, and it will also speed it up as well. So I would do that, you know. Obviously you're going to have to do that. Grab all of these keyframes and shorten the distance on the timeline that it is, and that will inherently change your curves too, but you'll have to update your curves because what's going to happen is you're going to get a lot of overshoot because it's going to smush these together and they're going to start moving above these keyframes. And so you just want to make sure that they're at the same position or below the top keyframes, or else you're going to get that overshoot, which you don't want. All right. Josh.
Hi. I was curious if we have a final in this class.
Well, no, the final for this class is all of your projects together in a portfolio. And a portfolio is essentially kind of what right now you guys are doing revisions and you're compositing all of your videos together in one video, right? And we're going to do something very similar where you're going to take your edited videos, your revised videos, and we're going to edit them together into a reel, which is essentially a video that's like 45 seconds to a minute long that showcases all the best sections of your work. And it's more than just putting each clip back to back. You're going to go through and you're going to cut sections out and you're going to alternate sections of certain projects on your timeline. And so it's a little bit more complex. It's not the hardest project that we have in here, but it's making sure that you have all of the projects that you've done in class done. So that's why getting all of these projects is so important. you want them all completed is because they're going into a final reel at the end of the semester, and that's what is going to be your final grade. So it's more of a final project, not a test. But good question. We're getting to the point where we're getting there. We're weeks away, so all right.
Hi, it's Natalie. I just had
Yep,
a
Natalie,
couple of
what's up?
questions. Well, not really
Pretty.
about the project, kind of. I don't think I had any trouble. The videos went really well in detail with everything. I think I only had like a hypothetical question, and if it was,
Ready for
if
it.
there was an audio error like late stage in the project, what would you do? 'Cause I know it's since it's better to do in the beginning, but would we just like kind of take these out and then fix the audio and then like paste them back in here, or is there like anything
Yeah,
to
at
do
that
about that?
point, what I would,
Sorry. Thank you.
that's a great question actually, because there have been times where, um, for instance, in my job, we have a lot of projects that will animate, and there's a voiceover done to the project. And for some reason, late stage in the revision round, the client's like, we've put it through legal review and they say this thing wrong. And so they have to do, they call them pickups, and they'll do pickups of certain sections of the voiceover, right? So they won't reread the whole thing, but they'll just do a little section. And now that section is never going to be the same timing. It might come close, but it's never going to be exactly the same. That's very rare that that would happen. And so what you do is at that point, I just adjust the audio as needed. Like I would cut a section out that is no longer useful to the client of that layer, that audio layer. I would cut that part short. I'd import the new pickup, drop that into the timeline, line it up, and then I would adjust the timing of the animation to fit that pickup time. And then everything after that, I would have to probably adjust too. So there are a lot of times when you're working with clients that they make a change that requires you to adjust the timing of the video. And that's a tedious process, depending on how much work you've put into it. And there's different ways around it. Like if it's a small change, it's not that big of a deal. But if it's a very complex scene, there's you might be able to stretch the time in a different way. But yeah, that does come up. It does happen. And really, you start with the audio again, and fixing the audio and lining it up to the rest of the stuff. Because if your problem is like further down here in the timeline, everything before is going to be fine. You're not going to have to worry about any of the stuff before that issue arises. And so, really, you're just going to cut that issue out. You're going to isolate that issue. Then you're going to make the change to that. And then everything afterwards is what you're going to have to adjust. But that's a really good question because that's thinking ahead to like what issues can arise when I'm working with this stuff. I am going to take a very quick break. I just need to step away from the computer for just a moment, and I will be right back. So you guys can take a quick break too. I'm just going to hide my camera, and then I'll be right back in a minute. All right, guys, sorry about that. I am back. All right. Next question was Jade.
Hello, I'm Jade. I have a question about the wing. When I rotate it, the top part right here look like the wing doesn't move. Is it normal?
It's because you're rotating, that one's rotating, Jade, on the wrong axis. And so you'll have to rotate it on the alternate axis to that. It might also have to do with the placement of the wing. I know that was something that I came into an issue with. Let me do this real quick. Let me come into here. And with the second wing here, let's see, it was this one, this back wing. I ended up having to drop the rotation just a little bit on my Z axis so that I didn't animate it on the Z axis, but I just dropped the rotation a little bit on the Z axis. And then I also believe that I brought it back behind this wing. So the points. So before the point of this wing was closer to here, and then I had to just kind of move that wing back this way a little bit more and then rotate it back a little bit to change the angle so that the animation did look appropriate. So if your rotation is only occurring on the Y axis like it should be, then you should be okay. All you have to do is just adjust this angle a little bit and then maybe push it back in space a little bit more. And that will help with the way it looks. Or else it looks like you're kind of trying to view the butterfly from like a front side angle, which it does look a little funny. And that's why I had to make those little adjustments in order to get the perspective right, more or less, on the butterfly wing. But that's a great question. If you're still having an issue with that, though, let me know and we can try and get that fixed for you. Keith. Hey, Keith, are you in the chat today?
Hello. So, I wanted to show what issues I was having with the lighting for Eve, but apparently OBS doesn't want to show Eve. I can see Eve on my screen, but for some reason OBS is not picking that up.
That is so
But
weird. I feel like
I still got the objects.
I feel like
right
that's
now I'm
happened
using
before.
Light Object 1, and I'm not quite certain if this is the correct light or not, because I assume it would probably be target light. I haven't tried these out yet.
You're using the target
but I still
light.
can't figure out the shadow part. I figured out how to make it more glossy, the floor, but it kind of not what I'm looking for. But I'm still struggling on figuring out why I'm still having issues with the shadows.
Okay.
I'm thinking it might be the lighting. I have it extremely close to Eve, plus the camera. So I'm suspecting that's the case, but I still don't know.
Yeah, let's look at this. Let's bring up Cinema 4D is already. Let me close this real quick. Actually, let's leave this open. But let me close this one. And I think with Eve, we did a little bit of the. Let me see. Why am I looking here? I need to duplicate this. Go to desktop. My brain's like a little sluggish. Like I know where I'm wanting to do, but my hand is like not paying attention. It's like my mind is just drifting in between where I'm supposed to focus on. So I apologize for that today, eBot. It's just taking me a second to register everything. All right, let's go into here. The biggest thing on the lights is going under the shadow tab right here. And this is what I was kind of talking about to you guys, is going under the shadow tab and making sure that shadow map soft is on. And so that's going to give you the shadows happening on Eve. Let's see here. Whoa. It's struggling because I also have After Effects open. Don't save. That was crazy. Let's try this again. But all of a sudden I turn the light on here on my key light. I put on that shadow, and then all of a sudden I had a shadow here in the corner. Like it keeps trying. It's wanting to re-render it like crazy, like an actual frame. But that shadow is happening because I turn the shadow on here on the light. So on the other one, I don't have that turned on. I have to turn on that shadow map here. And then all of a sudden you'll see there's going to be a shadow on this side as well. So you have to make sure that you're turning the shadows on your light object, on your actual lights. Because if you don't do that, they won't show up. I think that in your general tab too, you can also do that. So if I grab the fill light and I go to shadow, yeah, you can just change it there. So you don't have to go into the shadows here. But if you want to mess around with like the density of the shadow or the color of the shadow or the transparency, if you don't want it transparent, if you want it opaque, those kind of things you can mess around in the shadow tab. But you definitely have to go here and turn on the shadows on your lights. I don't think we were pressing for time during this section. So I honestly think what happened is that I just spaced on having to do that part. But I want you guys to make sure that you're turning on shadows on your lights here so that I can see the shadows of Eve when she's flying in, right? And then one of the shadows doesn't have to be that strong. Like one of them you don't want very strong at all. And it's going to be your fill light, right? The fill light's going to be, first of all, it should be less intense. Let's drop the intensity of the fill light a little bit. 75 seems good. And then under the shadow, let's put this at 30%. And then it should appear not so harsh when I do the render. It's just going to take a second. Yeah, this one's looking much, much softer because my key light is off to, oh gosh. My key light is off this way. Sorry, let's do it. This is going to work for me now. There we go. And then my fill light is over on this side. And I drop the opacity or the density of the shadow on this fill light here. And so that's why this shadow looks not so intense. This shadow looks really intense as well because the intensity of that light is really high. But that's how you want to make sure your shadows are